When my oldest was diagnosed with PANS-PANDAS autoimmune encephalitis, and we brought home our 2-year-old malnourished and traumatized daughter from an Eastern European orphanage, my hope to care well for my family went from just a desire to a vital necessity. From milling and baking with my own Einkorn flour, to learning age-old health habits, to trusting God in the valleys of life, I've learned that nurturing and nourishing the family is a holistic quest. Come along for conversations that encourage you to see all the nourishment we were created for in this life. Let's talk. Hey, welcome to the Nurture and Nourish podcast. This is Krista from Hilltop in the Valley, and today we are going to listen to part 2 of the Grandma's Habit series. This is a series based on YouTube videos that I did after researching several 100-year-old habits from grandma, or maybe your great-grandma, which are considered therapy for today. This is part 2, as I said, and so if you have not listened to part 1 yet, go ahead and head back to the previous episode so you don't miss out on that one, and then you will also be able to listen to part 3 after this. Without further ado, let's get started and learn some of those grandma's habits that are considered therapy today. Hey guys, it's Krista from Hilltop in the Valley. I am back with more of grandma's habits from 100 years ago. These are habits that grandma, or maybe your great-great-grandma, had 100 years ago that are considered therapy today. Now, I made a video about a month ago. People were inspired by it. I was inspired by it. And there are a lot more than that. And so I continued researching this. I continued looking into it. And I just decided, you know what? This is going to have to be a 3-part series. So this is number 2. If you have not seen the first video, please go back and look at that video. It has some great habits that you can incorporate, things that are considered therapy today, but were just normal 100 years ago. So today we're talking about the home front. We're talking about home and family, where you live. Next, know that I am not a doctor. I'm not trying to prescribe things. I'm not diagnosing your issues. If you do have some kind of health issues or mental health things going on, please talk to your own doctor or health practitioner about those. Okay, let's start right off and just get into it. We're going to talk about animals. You may have heard that having a pet can be like therapy. I mean, you see therapy dogs around. So studies actually show that interaction with dogs do tend to raise your oxytocin levels. Oxytocin is that hormone that makes you feel close, that makes you feel okay, like everything is just going to be okay and I feel so close to them. And it helps you to not secrete the cortisol, which is that hormone that we don't like so much because it gives us higher stress levels. Not to mention, it is also linked to better cardiovascular health. That's your heart health, guys. So this specific study that I found showed 31% reduced risk of cardiovascular disease. In addition, there was an emergency room study, this one was really neat, which found significant changes in anxiety, depression, and the well-being of their patients who were given about 10 minutes of dog time in addition to the usual care. All this is helpful and great. It's great to know that these dogs and these cats are just wonderful for their owners. Oh, did I say cats? I don't want to leave you cat owners out because yes, there has been research done to show that cats can also have a great calming effect. Right now though, I want to get into the whole shebang. I don't want to just talk about dogs and cats because we are looking at grandma therapy. We're looking at going 100 years back, right? And people did not just have dogs and cats, but animals were a part of normal everyday life. In fact, it wasn't until about the 1920s or so that people started really coming into the cities. Before that time, there were a lot more people who were living out in the country. So my point is that 100 years ago, people would have been around a lot more animals. Unless you're in like a big city. Wait. Maybe not, because in a big city, you'd still be around horses, and horses were pulling carriages, right? So you would still be around animals, even then. Now, I know about like dog and cat therapy, but Are there other animals that might be able to provide similar therapy to humans? What about chickens? Yes, chicken therapy is actually a thing. I know, I'm not joking. This is one of the funnier things, but hear me out here. There is an actual study. Now, I will say this is just one study, and you don't want to get too excited about one study, right? But this study is on the cognitive ability of chickens, and it shows how they can also lower anxiety to make people feel more at peace. When we're talking cognitive ability of chickens, I'm not sure that the chickens I had would have, gone into that same category. There's different breeds for sure. But this study was showing that chickens actually have the ability to kind of read people. They have different vocal noises that they can make depending on how they are feeling and how they're connecting with the people around them. So there's some interesting things on it. And I will also agree with Miss Rojas, I hope I'm saying her name correctly, her discovery that chickens can bring joy and help with loneliness. So she loved being involved in therapies for the elderly, and she was a volunteer at a lot of different nursing homes or homes for older people. As a volunteer, she brought Pekin Bantam chickens, which are known to be a little bit more docile and they enjoy being cuddled. That's obviously the chicken I should have had, as well as bringing some guinea pigs and some rabbits for the residents there to enjoy. The residents loved seeing the chickens arrive and interacting with them. They made the perfect lap animal, bringing laughter and for many bringing back memories from raising chickens as a child. So, like we were just talking about, you look back years and years ago and there would have been more people who had these animals as a part of their everyday life. So when we first moved to our hilltop farmhouse, we would ride bikes down the road to a neighbor who had something like 30 chickens, and we would purchase eggs from him. And we asked him, do you really make very much money from these eggs? And he said, nah. He didn't sell them for very much. He said, nah, I mainly just make enough money to feed them. And that was okay for him. So why did he keep them? He said, I enjoy watching them. And at first that didn't seem quite right. It seemed kind of odd to me until I got my own chickens. And then I understood it. I understood that there was something about having these other animals be a part of your life as well. And this has provided me a way to go to the pantry window and look outside and see what my ducks are doing. And to me, that is a much more helpful way to relieve stress than by scrolling Facebook. Now, I do want to go back to something that I just said about the nursing home residents remembering back when they had their own chickens, a lot of them. And that's because it was a lot more common 100 years ago to have animals in town, not just dogs and cats, but backyard chickens were a thing. And I do think that is kind of coming back now, that people are wanting to do that more and be a little bit more, have more control over their food supply, or just want to enjoy having that. But back 100 years ago, having birds, it was just kind of a necessity. So what about the small farm? What about other animals? Well, there's also been studies to assess how interaction with farm animals can help mental health. Okay, it's not just your everyday dogs and cats and chickens, but farm animals as well. In a 12-week study, 29 people with clinical depression were randomly assigned to farm therapy. Okay, it's actually a thing, farm therapy. They worked in this trial interacting with dairy cattle. Results were a significant decline in depression and a significant increase in self-sufficiency due to learning and then being able to accomplish their work. So yes, there's something therapeutic about not just connecting with people, but with animals as well. Sometimes it's even more hard to connect with people than animals. For over a decade, I have been creating Einkorn flour recipes, and I have done it. I've put together some of our family's favorite comfort food recipes made with nature's original wheat, so you can make them too. Anti-inflammatory, it's missing the D chromosomes, which are responsible for the wheat intolerance in many people. One comparison of Einkorn has shown 213% more lutein, 55% more riboflavin, and 76% more manganese, if I could say that, when really I could just go on and on. It has so much nutrition. The fact is, this nutritional powerhouse also tastes great. We enjoy things like biscuits, sourdough cinnamon rolls, but honestly, my kids also want to chime in.
There's not a lot of Einkorn recipes out there, so she made her own cookbook. And speaking of favorite, here's some of ours.
Pumpkin streusel stones. Christmas-style chocolate chip Twitties.
We would love to have you share some of our favorite cozy recipes too, so grab your copy of Einkorn Recipes for a Cozy Winter by going to hilltopinthevalley.com and clicking on the cookbook link. And let us know if you enjoy the recipes as much as we do. Number 2 of Grandma's therapy is neighbor hospitality. Yes, I know we're going to talk about this, okay? So when we first moved into our neighborhood, I just had this vision of, we're going to have neighbors over in our front yard. People will be enjoying each other and we'll do parties. And I got to admit, it hasn't quite happened like that, like I imagined. It's a lot harder to earn trust of neighbors now than it used to be. People's protective instincts are just up more, and we don't interact with each other as much as we would have 100 years ago. So the 1920s census showed that people were actually starting to move from the countries into the city during that time. And also during that time, the houses that were being built together had these large porches. And these large porches were made so that on like summer nights, when you would have this super hot house and you were uncomfortable, people could actually go out onto the porch to get cooled off. Some people would sleep out there. The other great thing about having a big porch is it provided more of an outdoor living room so that you would have neighbors who were right next door to you, right? He's on his porch, you're on yours. You just feel like a little bit awkward just sitting there. So you start talking and then he realizes, I better come over there because it's this weird just talking back and forth between our porches. And then you begin to have a couple more people come over. But honestly, people were kind of forced into this neighboring, and it was a good thing. It produced trust between each other, or maybe it didn't. Maybe it made you realize who someone actually was, but you knew each other a little bit better. Now then the invention of the air conditioner came in, and guess what? People didn't have to go out to their porches quite as much. The invention of phones came in, and people didn't have to go talk between porches. They would just call each other. So among country dwellers, this neighbor interaction wasn't just because you happened to live close. It wasn't just because you were looking for a friend, but it was more of a need. You actually had a need for each other and you wanted someone to be able to back you up. It wouldn't always be easy to have the vet come down if you were struggling if your cow was struggling to give birth. Sometimes you would have to have help from a neighbor and you would go over and ask them for that help. Or maybe you needed some eggs and town is, 8 miles away and you can't get to town, but you know that your neighbor probably has some eggs. And so you'd go and you would ask them if you could get some eggs from them. The relationship between neighbors was often, I might need something. I will help them in exchange. They will help me probably when I need something as well. And we don't feel ashamed to ask for help because we know it'll probably be returned in the future too. But as conveniences moved into the country, right, I don't always need to have help from other people. I know that I can probably run to the store easily. It's not going to take half a day to get to the store. And if I did happen to ask my neighbor for something, what would they think? I don't talk to them enough to even know if they would be offended if I'd ask for help with something. So because we don't talk to each other as much, we also don't trust each other as much. And this has in turn made us kind of reclusive. So this spring I was driving home to work on my blog, Hilltop in the Valley, and I happened to notice that in our neighbor's field was a bloody lamb. And I kept driving by, a little bit disturbed by the lamb, but I kept driving by, and then there was this dog, and all of a sudden I just knew I had to stop. So I called her up and was trying to ask her, what do I do? Do you want me to take the lamb home? I tried to put the lamb in my car. I ended up accidentally letting the horse out, which she still doesn't know to this day. And then I didn't know how to get the horse in. And so I went back. I tried to push it. It was in the ditch. I'm in these, I want to say heels, but they're really not that high of heels. They're like these leather boot heels. And what can I say? I should have changed my shoes. I actually had driven to the house and then back to get some towels for the lamb. So now I'm trying to get the horse back into the field, and I have nothing except for some jumper cables, which then I think, well, I don't want to try and put a jumper cable around the horse's neck, because what are people going to think of me driving by seeing this girl pulling a horse by jumper cables? And so I keep trying to get the horse to move, and finally I'm like, whatever. And I go and I get the jumper cables because I needed it back. And the horse was great. As soon as I just put them over the neck, the horse walked back in. So I ended up being able to bring the lamb back over to its barn, look to see if there were any other towels in the area. I come back out, and at this point, I would say like 45 minutes had passed. And I wasn't sure what to do. I was waiting for her to get there. And then I look up and I notice all of the lambs and the sheep in the field are running up the hill. And I'm thinking, what's going on? And then I realize, oh, there's a dog running after them. And so all of a sudden I'm just like, oh, I need to stop this, And I take my phone with me. I jump over the fence. I run through mud that's like 8 inches deep. Ugh. And I start running up the hill in my leather heels, and I get up close enough to be able to take some pictures of the animal. Honestly, I wasn't sure if it was a dog. I had a moment when I was like, is this a cougar? Is this a coyote? I really stopped for a second, but I did figure out it was a dog. It had a collar on it. All to say, I did not work that day on my blog. I was gone most of the time. Then I had to talk with animal control, who came out to ask questions. And I have to admit, I was a little bit miffed that I stopped. And she ends up sending me this huge thank you gift. And it had chocolates in it. What can I say? Like, that's huge in itself. But she wrote this really nice card just to say how thankful that she was to have neighbors like us, because so many other people would just drive by, which I would hate to think. I do think some people would feel like, oh, I can't stop, which is true. I think a lot of people just can't. Okay, so it is sad that today a lot of people cannot or would not just stop and help. But that's not really what I'm trying to look at today. I want to know how being a neighbor is actually good therapy. So we know for certain through research that growing up in a bad neighborhood increases the chance of criminal behavior. And it's also linked neighborhoods to mortality rates, heart disease, cancer, low birth rate, childhood illness, depression, anxiety, and more. Remember, these have to do with a lot of different factors. Back then, the highest expectation was on ourselves to be a good neighbor. And maybe that was because, you wanted to get something in return. But either way, that was the highest expectation, that I need to be a good neighbor as well. Not saying that there are not bad neighbors, that there were not bad neighbors 100 years ago. A Dutch study had people with lower levels of mental well-being split into different groups. Some of the groups were assigned to other-focused kindness without self-focused kindness. And then one group had to reflect on it afterwards, and the other group didn't. So they didn't think about what they did afterwards. Another group was assigned to self-focused kindness, and then there was a controlled group to compare these. The results showed that those who practice kindness for others without reflecting on it afterwards had reduced stress at the follow-up. Basically, don't think about what you're doing. If you guys know, the Bible says, don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing, and there's a reason for that. I want to go back to that story I shared with you about me helping my neighbor, and that was not lowering my stress to do that. And looking at this study, I can tell you the reason why was because I reflected on it afterwards. I said, was that really worth my time? I mean, I gave up my day of blogging. That was very stressful. The whole ordeal was stressful. I have blood in my van, which, no, it's not a big deal. But even though in the end, like, I would do it again, I would want to do that for my neighbor. But having that self-reflection time and having my brain go over that actually made me feel more stressed about it than if I would have just said it was totally worth it and set aside any thoughts that would tell me that it wasn't worth it. So common therapy nowadays says that we need to do self-care, right? And we need to take care of ourselves to help ourselves feel good. Interestingly, this research actually shows that caring about other people first and then not even questioning it afterwards, that is what really helps your mental well-being. So 100 years ago, they didn't necessarily have TVs, but they did have entertainment. The thing with that was that their entertainment generally worked around multiple people who were being entertained together. I used to turn on the TV when it was time for dinner. The kids would be expecting this. They would want to do it. You know, they'd be asking me, is it 5 o'clock yet? Is it time that we can turn on a show? It was not the babysitter I needed because TVs cannot do everything for them. And so they would come in constantly and tell me, oh, is it my turn yet? Oh, the show's not working. Can you please come and help us? And so one day I'd had enough and I came in and I shut it off and I said, we're not going to do this anymore. We are going to go outside and play. You guys are going to play with toys in here. It was very hard for them because they had built up this habit of looking forward to this and asking me every day if it was time for TV yet. And so there were several weeks that we went through of them trying to create this new habit and getting out of this, can I say, addiction. They became more creative. Their play before was interrupted because in the back of their mind, they were looking forward to a TV time. And so they couldn't actually fully get into whatever games they were doing or things they were playing. You look back to grandma or 100 years ago, you know, people would do things together. They'd go to a recital together. They'd go to a concert. They'd listen to the radio. And years later, they'd go out to a movie together. So there were entertaining things happening. So what are the benefits to that compared to the type of entertainment that we have now? Entertainment now, it generally consists of some kind of a screen and often a phone that belongs to an individual person. So number one, we know that connection is key, that you need some kind of connection in order to get those benefits for your mental health. So number two, we know that phones or screens, these can give entertainment, but it is an isolated form of entertainment. If you are using it solely for yourself, it is something that you choose, and you're not necessarily choosing it based on what other people around you are wanting to see as well. I remember doing road trips down to Southern California with my family as a kid, and we would fight sometimes over what we were listening to. Does anyone else remember those days? And I realized how helpful that actually is to have those conversations with each other and have to learn to allow other people to choose what we're listening to. So number three, it's addictive qualities. When you get addicted to something, it becomes so that the hit of like dopamine that you're getting, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to say this perfectly, but basically you're going to need more and more of that in order for it to be special for you. And so when you do actually have those connecting times where maybe the family's getting together for a family movie, it's going to be a lot harder for your brain to say, oh, this is a special time, this is a special place, because you are so used to needing that screen and needing more of what you want. And it's a lot harder to share that with other people than at that point. A study from 2020 showed the ways that solitary use of media leads to isolation from family. That sound familiar? Well, shared media can actually bring family together. It can also help perk conversations that are really good conversations for people to have. This could include music, games, TV, movies. People are more important than things. And the way that we use our devices, our electronics, that says how much we actually care about people. My point here today is to say that it is so much more healthy for us to include others and to actually listen to others and enjoy entertainment with others rather getting bound up in these addictive properties of screens. So number 4 is heritage. When I was younger, I used to go visit my grandparents, and when I would get there, I would see photographs gracing the walls, and they would be black and white photographs. The difference that I want to note is that the photographs weren't always just of them or of their parents, but they would actually have older photographs on their walls showing the heritage that came before them. Now, it doesn't seem too unusual, right? But I will note that when I go to friends' houses that are my own age, I don't see old photographs of ancestors, of great-grandparents or grandparents. I might see it in my parents' generation, but there was something in my generation where we just are not doing this. So going to my grandparents' house, I would hear stories of my ancestors who came over from Germany and started a shoe store and how that began for them pre-World War, and just learn a little bit about my German heritage. My grandparents always had this beautiful German tablecloth on their table. We don't speak German. We don't do a lot besides eat potatoes and meat. So skip forward a couple generations, and honestly, I struggle getting any photographs up on my walls. Well, I mean, right now my walls are still being built up from the renovation that we did last year through our mold. When did our culture change from being built up by the heritage before us, instead having to make ourselves, to make our own line? Now, I understand that maybe not everyone feels like they have a heritage to be proud of. You know, even if there is some family that you are not proud of and you do not want to be associated with, you can look back farther and go back generations to see where you came from. And some people don't know where they came from. And it is important, I think, to have that understanding that I was made not just now, but as a result of, all of these lines that came down, and that their DNA is in me as well. There's something about being grounded to something bigger than you that takes away from the stress of feeling as though we have to make ourselves completely and start from scratch. A study on Maori culture identity showed that those who had a strong cultural identity, these were more likely to experience good mental health and less depression. This study was done on youth, and I believe they did it on youth because they realized the vast differences that their emotions could play depending on what their heritage was, on how that was taken by people around them. So I was going to church one night. This was when we were getting ready for our Christmas pageant, which was an every year event. It had been going on for, 30 years or so. And I got there 5 p.m.-ish, and I told one of the other moms, man, it is so hard to get dinner on the table and make it down here. And I was wondering how all these other families made it while still having to get dinner ready for people and all of that. And then this other mom informed me that traditionally Mennonites did not do a dinner on Sunday nights. They did a large midday meal, and then people would just kind of snack throughout the day, the rest of the day. My grandparents were not Mennonite per se. They did a large midday meal Sunday as well. And then that was kind of their biggest meal of the day. They didn't worry about a lot later, as I have found that it is very helpful for our family, especially on Sunday when we're trying to relax and not do a lot. But all to say, I've learned from the past here, and I've said, wow, this actually works for me. So the Mennonite Church is really rooted in heritage and tradition. They're rooted in their family time, and those are things that are very near and dear to them. Some of the things that they do, there are actually very good reasons for them, and it's not just a tradition that is expected or is right or wrong, but it's actually a very helpful thing that I can learn from. And I have learned from this, and it has been helpful for my family. So how do we do this now with the impact that heritage can have on us? Well, just that, we try to learn from it. We try to see, even if we don't know exactly what our heritage was, how can we learn from it, and how can we incorporate the pride of our heritage into our daily lives? Perhaps it is taking on traditions that you know were passed down from great-great-great-great-grandparents and kept on coming down, and then maybe they just kind of stopped in the last 40 years. And maybe that will give you a little bit more grounding and help you to know that you don't have to make all of the decisions, that you don't have to choose decision fatigue on what is going to create your legacy, your family, that there can be more to family time than just what you make up. It can be something based on history and based on all of these people who are in your line of ancestors. Adopt traditions that are beneficial to you, and know that not only will this give you more of a pride for where you came from, even if it was long, long ago, but it can also help you with decision fatigue as you try to build up your own family and your own legacy. I have one more video on this coming up. That video will be part 3 of 3, so keep your eyes out for it. This has been fun. I hope to see you guys again soon. Bye-bye. Hey there, I just have to let you know, I am not a doctor, and nothing here is meant to be a diagnosis or a prescription. This is meant for entertainment purposes alone, so please talk to your own provider to help with any medical and or nutritional needs that you may have. That's it for today. Thank you for coming along for this conversation. If you want to learn more, go ahead and go to hilltopinthevalley.com, or you can check out the YouTube channel at Hilltop in the Valley on YouTube. Before you go, would you do me a favor and go on whatever app right now that you are listening on, whatever platform, and would you leave a good review for this podcast? This is a new podcast, and the way that we grow is by leaving great reviews and by sharing with others. So if you know someone who could benefit or be encouraged by this conversation, please send the podcast to them so that they can listen to it also. Again, thank you for listening, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.